Hi, I wanted to make a video on when to change your strings, especially for classical guitar. I'll talk a little bit about electric and acoustic also. So, the easiest way to check when to change your string is if you look at the second fret of the D string. That's often where the guitar gets used the most. So, if you play jazz, you're using more of the fingerboard and it doesn't get used as much. But for a lot of players, they'd play like four main chords of, and that was a C, an E minor, and an A minor or something, or it might have been E major, whatever. But like that's how a lot of players play, and that all uses that same fret. So if you're one of those players, that's like a good place to look at. One of the good things to do is to check the difference between the underneath of the string. You just roll it over a little with your thumb, and you could see the difference in color. So like mine is starting to become a little bit of a purplish brown, um, and that's how it turns when the silver from the strings oxidizes. Um, but you can really see the stark difference by just turning it over or looking closer to here where I don't really play as much. Sometimes some harmonics, but like it doesn't really get used as much. So you can really see the difference and see how much it's used. Another thing you can do to check is just rub your finger along the treble string, and I don't know if you could hear it right now, but it makes a bit of a scratching sound. If you contrast it to doing it over here, you hear almost nothing. Like I have a bit of a fingernail because I play finger style, so you know, the more your strings get used, the more of that scratching sound you'll hear. So like eventually you'll sort of develop an ear for like, this is a bit louder than I want it to be, um, and like it's just an indicator of your overall the amount of you know how clean your string is, how many little dents and imperfections are on your string, and the more that there are, the worse it will be able to vibrate in a clean manner. Um, when there's dirt on your strings, it's not able to vibrate evenly along the whole string, so it creates, it doesn't sound as good. It sounds duller because it's just not a clean vibration. Um, it also affects tuning because parts of it are able to vibrate more freely and parts aren't. So, um, I when I used to have only like one guitar, I would play mostly on this one. Now I have a few more. Um, it would take me about of heavy use about a month of playing, and then it was kind of like, okay, these things are needing changing. Um, Now that I have multiple guitars, I don't really go through strings as often as once a month. Um, and depending on how much you sweat can affect how long that will take. I also clean my strings. I have a cloth somewhere. Haha. So I actually clean my strings more often than I did originally. What I do is I take the string and I pinch it, but I take the cloth and I pinch the string with it, so there's a sort of a nail on both sides, and I rub it along the string, and you can actually see a significant amount of dirt come off. Um, on electric you can do this too, and when you're doing it out with silver plated strings, there's sometimes just silver coming off. I'll make your rag a little dirty, but that's okay. So when you do that, your strings will at least double in their lifetime, um, which is pretty cool. It makes them sound great, and if you're ever hearing a sort of dull sound, give it a wipe, and you might be able to play it for a few more weeks. Um, luckily strings aren't that expensive, so I have uh, lots of strings available, and some people, like when I started off, I would try to like keep track, like, okay, the bass, the sixth string, it's not really used as much, like it, it's thicker first of all, and it just doesn't, it's still good. So I was kind of like doing this like calculation of these ones need changing, these don't. The trebles last longer than the D string, and but eventually I was just like, I don't feel like keeping track of this, especially when you have multiple guitars, and I just change all six at once, even though it could last longer. Thank God I have enough money to buy an extra pair of strings, and I don't have to um, scrounge for money. Um, but yeah, I change all the strings at once. It's just, it's nice to have a new pair of strings on. There's other, instances where you'd want to change your strings also. Um, Not necessarily that they need it, but if you're doing a performance in front of a group of people, um, that's part of what you're expected to do. It's like taking a haircut before a show. You want to look good. You want your instrument to sound nice. Put on some new strings. It's costs you $8. Especially if there's people paying to see you. Try to give them their money's worth and play with a nice fresh pair of strings. If it's a classical guitar, you'd want to probably change it about 4 or 5 days before, because the tuning, it takes a bit of time to adjust, and um, if it's electric, you could probably get away with it with 1 or 2 days before, but you don't want to be retuning every song. um, I'm personally studying in Berkeley, so I like to restring at the beginning of every semester. um, it's just nice. You make a new impression with new people, uh, and your guitar is sounding good, and it's not a necessary thing, but it's a nice thing to do. So that's one of the opportunities I take to change my strings. And yeah, for electric, I use coated strings for my Fender, and the Elixir coated strings. I love them, and they last a long time. Uh, I'm not as good at telling that like it's dull, so I could play those for a good 6 months, and eventually I start seeing the coating start to peel. Um, but again, I play fingerstyle all the time, even on electric. So um, the pick definitely wears your strings out quicker. So I'm not going to give the best advice on how often a normal electric player should be playing. Should be changing their strings, but for me, I could easily go for 4 or 5 months on a pair of elixirs, which is great. And it's the same with the acoustic. Yeah, for my acoustic right now, I don't use coated. I wanted to try out the Ernie balls, which they sound great. I still kind of prefer elixirs, so I'm probably gonna go back to them when I finish off my supply of Ernie balls. But I change them about every 2 months or so. Um, Again, if you wipe them, they last longer. So, you um, anyways, I hope that helped. It was something I was always wondering, how often to change your strings, and it really is a matter of taste. I know some people probably change them more than I do, but yeah, about once a month. Some people like to do it every 2 weeks or so. I think it's a bit excessive, since I do play quite a lot, and putting on 2 3 hours a day on a guitar, and I'm saying once a month is fair enough. I think some people have their ears more attuned to timbres, and pitches. They could more easily identify when things are, sounding nice. And like, for me, it's still something I'm working on, I guess. It's definitely improved a lot since I started playing guitar. But, if you're someone that has ears that are more attuned to the timbre, maybe maybe you'll see a need to change them more often than I do. But yeah. Anyways, I hope that helps everyone, and ciao.